Mimi ni president wa mbunge la raia Mashinani Network. Siku ya leo tumekuja kama taifa bila kuangalia huyu ni Mungiriama, huyu ni Mjaluo, huyu ni Mkikuyu, huyu ni Mmeru. Tumekuja wote kuleta ujumbe mmoja tu ya kwamba sisi kama taifa la Kenya tunataka katiba yetu iheshimiwe, kwa sababu yenye tulikuwa tunataka kuongozwa iko katika katiba. Tunataka wabunge waheshimu katiba, wakati huu si wakati wa kubadilisha katiba, bali ni wakati wa kutekeleza katiba jinsi ilivyo.
And so Kenyans are saying the time is up for these guys to wake up. Their time is up, and we are saying that we want to mobilize another breed of new transformative and servant leaders whom we want to be able to ensure that we are going to give them the opportunity to come and sit in this house, and of course from the county levels coming up until the legislation, the parliament. And we are saying that this is basically a message that we are sending, and this is just the beginning of this kind of revolution that we keep talking about. And Kenyans are saying that leadership is not just about selfishness. Our leaders have proved that they are very selfish. Unfortunately, they are not giving the kind of leadership and service that Kenyans are looking for.
Let us, the Kenyans, see that the kind of leaders they elect is the kind of leaders who listen to them. Thank you a lot.
Well, Chapter 6 is, I would say, the fulcrum of the current constitution. It is the chapter that is supposed to sanitize our leadership. It's supposed to help us as a country move from poor leadership and poor governance to a leadership of integrity set on parameters that are under Chapter 6. So the chapter is really the chapter that is supposed to sanitize our leadership as we move forward. So insofar as the elections are concerned, what Chapter 6 stands to do is to make sure that only those who pass the standards set out in that chapter qualify for leadership positions, whether they are elected or appointed.
There should be people of integrity. That's why that chapter is called Leadership and Integrity. It's a very core element. People with very high moral and ethical standards, people who can be, trusted by the people, meaning people who are honest. They don't, double speak and end up deceiving people. They make many promises at elections and then they don't fulfill them. Kenyans are tired of the leadership that has, really not helped this country. If anything, some of the reversals, some of the delays in progress and increasing poverty in the country has happened because we haven't had good leaders.
Being a leader, being a state official, it doesn't mean it's just the person who's going to be elected, it's your whole team. So integrity cuts across. It also cuts across us as Kenyans. What does that mean to us? How can we localize for people to understand what integrity means? So it doesn't just focus on the leaders, but it focuses on Kenya. We mean men and women with integrity. For us to actually address some of the social problems we experience in our country.
Well, I think our leadership is in dire need of change. We have leaders who have no values. We have leaders who have no commitment to this country, and we have leaders who are self-seeking. The public interest is always sacrificed on the altar of self-indulgence and self-interest. So we need to move away from this kind of leadership to a leadership that espouses values that we hold dear as a country, and the same values and principles that Article 10 of the Constitution sets out, and Chapter 6 of the Constitution sets out, and the chapter on public service also sets out. So if we can move to a level where we can say those provisions are complied insofar as our leadership is concerned, then we can say we are making progress.
There is no way you are going to fail to put your contribution in the taxation and then you want to be a leader of integrity. Integrity also means, as a country, we don't have a lot of resources, so everybody has to pull their weight in those resources. So I think that as many people as are not paying tax should really not be made, because you are assuming public office to come and use tax. You should come and use tax which you yourself have painfully contributed to. Painfully here means that you have not tax evaded. You have not paid tax at 5% when you actually ought to be paying payee at 30% like everybody else. So that taxation is also important. Then conviction, if you have been convicted of an offense, convicted of a crime, convicted of very serious offenses in this country, then I think there should be a problem as well. If also you are under investigation by anti-corruption or some of these commissions, or even hate speech, if there are investigations about you for some of those things, I think that people should take those very, very seriously.
Well, I think the public actually has information on a lot of the leaders. Information that you wouldn't find even in looking at the records of, say, the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission and all these other institutions that are supposed to provide information. The public has much more fundamental information than just what the institutions have. And I think this is where the strength of the public lies. They know, for example, who grabbed a piece of land belonging to a school, who stole someone's land and fraudulently developed a title deed. They know also, in fact, in terms of morals, they also know who is of less moral standing in society. And what we would urge the public is that when you have, we should set a very high bar so that those who do not pass this test, we should be bold enough to reject them, whether they belong to our families, our clans, our ethnic grouping, or even our region. We must go for quality leadership, and a leadership that espouses the values that we hold dear as a country.
There are innovative methodologies that are being implemented by civil society organizations with regard to vetting of leaders. And the first thing is for somebody to be able to present themselves to a community and say, I want to vie for this or that elective post. That being the case, I agree to stand in front of my community at the local level and answer questions. And people will ask you very simple questions, and you know how it is in the village. Tunasikia umewacha bibi yako, hasa umechukua bibi ya mtu mwingine. At that very basic level, those are very fundamental integrity issues. Kulikuwa na shamba yako, beacon ilikuwa hapa, tukasikia ukaambia mtu mwingine atoe hiyo beacon aweke. At that level, just people having an opportunity to interrogate their own leaders is important.
There will be a long list of how to look for clean leaders. I think the church would also be helpful here. I think that, again, and they will blame the Christian or accuse us Christians of, equating some of these things. But a lot of God-fearing leaders, not really the ones who lie that they are God-fearing. I think a lot of really, really good God-fearing leaders would also a lot of times, some of the religious values are also moral values, and some of the 10 commandments are really, just what we are asking for here. So again, if some of the religious leaders have also stood with the religion and stood by the 10 commandments and done their bit in that, I think that also would be a good way to check whether they will have integrity in future. But it's also integrity and performance. Integrity and performance. We also want to see leaders who transform societies and who bring reforms and who also bring change, a positive change, because you can also bring negative change in the places where they have been.
What is your take on the fight against corruption?
Corruption is quite rampant. It's quite rampant. It's not given time. It's not given even chance. Even if they choose, even if they elect, even if they come with a party fighting the corruption, they will never make it. It is rampant.
We want a good system of change where we elect people who are for the people and with the people. Saizi tukiongea huyu mtoto hata ni kama chakula lunch. Na saizi tukiongea wengi wako hapa hawana makazi. You have been fighting for your own self-ambitions.
Corruption for me in Kenya is in many levels. There is that, the public office, but we also have corruption of morals, corruption of ideas, corruption of theories, corruption of the values that we live by, corruption in the sense of what we glorify. You see a boyfriend with 2 girlfriends becoming a hero. That is still corruption in a certain level. All of those habits should go.
As you know, corruption actually means stealing from the people. Yeah, you're stealing from taxpayers when you get in corrupt use. You are also being dishonest, totally dishonest, and you are depriving others of what is rightfully theirs.
Corruption has, as I said, is the biggest threat we have to this country, in all fronts, I would say. And in development, it sets us back significantly. The Permanent Secretary for Finance at some point told a committee of parliament that we lose our development budget, 30% of our development budget to corruption and waste. And that is a significant amount. If you were to just look at the figures of our national budget as we've had them since even the last 5 years, you would appreciate the kind of loss that we are talking about. It's the kind of loss that if the money is used against this country, say even in terms of security, it is enough to bring this country down. Development-wise, it means that everything we set up to do, we have to put a markup of 30% of the total cost for us to be able to accommodate the cost of corruption, which is tragic because it means that for say every 100,000 shillings that you spend on a student to educate a student, say at the national level, then 30% of that goes to waste and corruption.
At the end of the day, when you're voting, that leader is not with you at the ballot box. You are alone. Okay. And I know the situations might be they differ. You know, someone is very poor, they're given money and it will actually feed their children. You know, I've lived in that life. You know, I used to live in Mathare, and I've seen that, you know, how people take money, but at the end of the day, when you're voting, you're alone. You know, and you decide what kind of leaders you want. You know, you don't, the thing is to urge the Kenyans not to vote because that person gave you money, but to understand, you know, the person you are voting for will ensure that you move out of poverty. You know, at that time he's bribing you, that clearly tells you that's not the right person to have in office. You know, and once you're in that both, you are all alone. You'll have to choose whichever leader that you want, and that's why I say it's not only about the leader, it's what kind of citizens we want. If you vote for the person who gave you money, then you'll continue to be in poverty. You know, we need to vote people who are accountable, people who like really will come and ensure you move from poverty.
So this culture, and if you follow African culture traditionally, actually crimes against property were often punished more severely than crimes against person. If you and I fought and you broke my leg, you could be fined, the elders would say to you, could be fined cows or something. But if I came to you and I stole your cows, all of them, and I ran away with them, I could be ostracized. I'll be called a thief, moishi, as is in many communities. And I would not even be able to get married. I would be a very despised and ostracized figure. So that's what began my fascination, is that what went wrong that we now have this culture of corruption that has demeaned us as Africans and as black people.
We are talking about accountability. And unfortunately, every time we have commissions, very bad things go on in this country. Names are mentioned. Unfortunately, commissions and committees are put up in place, but the reports take forever, to be given back to the people of this country. So we are saying that we still cannot trust the people who sit in this house, the parliamentarians of today, to be able to protect and to guard this document. And we are saying that this is a document that must be lived. It is a document that must be respected. It is a document that must also be practiced right from the apex of power until to the grassroots. It is a document that has been respected to the spirit and to the letter, from the commas to the full stops. And I think that is a message that is very clear.
They are tampering with the constitution, surely, and they are making Kenya to look as if we are not concerned. So I'm asking the president himself to disband this parliament and go for the general election immediately.
This is just sisi wenyewe tuamue, hizi tabia tu ni mbaya, kama kuiba tap. So when you start stealing the tap, na yeye ule kiongozi aliye juu, yeye naye anaiba pesa ya free primary education. Mwingine naye pale yako kwa health, na yeye anachota kwa hiyo budget ya health. So eventually then we have a country that doesn't move because all the systems are ground to a halt. So we have to just change that, and we tuamue tu, hii hata si mambo na sheria. Wenyewe tu we just say no. As a country, tumefika. This is our tap. This is our stadium. If you steal something like this Kasarani, if you go, it is, everything. Even people steal the chairs. So when now the chairs are stolen, when we come for the next game, we have to stand because viti ziliibiwa. Isn't viti zetu? Tomorrow we want to come to the stadium and watch.
People have internalized, even ordinary people now. No, it's not just the mega corruption. It's also the micro corruption, or kitu kidogo. Everywhere you go, which now has increasingly become kitu kikubwa, and sometimes kitu everything, meaning all you have, you give. And so it's a very, very serious problem, but which must be addressed squarely. And through this leadership and integrity chapter, if it is well implemented, we can begin to deal with corruption. Because if you have good leaders in place, who will not just be mouthing rhetoric about the zero tolerance to corruption, but actually you'll be living it themselves in the way they behave in public office. They would be in a position then to put the necessary structures and processes at every level, and to put enough punitive measures in place to finally wipe out corruption. Because it is not like it's cast in stone. It is not like it cannot go away. Like I said, it's like a culture. Culture is the dynamic. You can acquire a certain type of culture, but you can also be, socialized out of that culture. And this is a bad culture, which must go. But to get rid of it, first we need good leaders who can show the way, who can put the necessary benchmarks and standards in place and enforce them, especially the enforcement part, not just talking about it.
Integrity, transparency, accountability, those are very abstract words. We're talking about them here in Nairobi, and they sound nice, and they're also popular with the international community. It will take time before we own them. So we start by not electing thieves. I think the first thing that Kenyans need is to ensure that they are electing leaders who are servants first, people who want to serve them. And those should be just one simple trait. Your leader should not be a thief.
So the chapter is really the chapter that is supposed to sanitize our leadership as we move forward. So insofar as the elections are concerned, what we are, what Chapter 6 stands to do is to make sure that only those who pass the standards set out in that chapter qualify for leadership positions, whether they are elected or appointed. And as such, for the first time, we are actually setting a standard for leadership in this country.
What we need to move to is first, of course, the prosecution and taking people to court, but more importantly is us ourselves as Kenyans understanding that it is just plain wrong to go to a public office and unjustly enrich yourself.
No. I'm saddened when you go to a community and you ask them what kind of a leader is like, who is your role model? And they will say somebody who has a lot of wealth, but they don't look in terms of that person, in terms of the ethical fiber of the individual, in terms of how that person is engaged in development. So we need to change that mindset. We need to start ensuring that young people start learning empathy at an early age. We need to ensure that young people start to learn leadership at an early age, to learn teamwork. Now, in today's world, if you work alone, you're not going to make any headways. But if you work as a team, we're going to develop our country. So let's see how we can bring each other on board and ensure that we work as a unit to move and address the issues that we are facing in our country.